Hey folks, so we're pre-boarding for Delta. They've oversold this flight and they're begging people to take other flights at 5:45 in the a.m. For $600, which would be super attractive, but we have board games to get to and play. Now, I would consider the offer, however, if they threw in access to the sweet-ass Delta Lounge that's upstairs. So Matt and I did some reconnoitering this evening. And in Delta Lounge is this magical place where there's like showers.
Sky Miles
Club. There's like showers and drinks, and they give you pasta, and they like rub your back, and there's like, girls with fans and stuff. And it looks bitchin'. So we went in there with our tickets because we did buy an expensive seat, seeing if we could get in, and we were denied access. But I would consider taking the crappy 5:45 a.m. flight and the $600 to hang out in the suite lounge.
Just on principle.
Who's with me?
Because we were denied access.
Yeah. Also, are there enough people here? I don't know. It's crazy.
A lot of damn people.
It's a lot of people. They're begging people to check their bags, but no one will do it. I kind of want to get on and work the mic for them and just remind people gently to get off their butts so that we can get off the ground.
I'm sure that's exactly what's holding us up, but I feel you.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll check in later from Ohio, and we'll see you all on the flip side.
Obligatory walking down the jetway shot. And that's all I recorded of my wife and I's entire 4-day trip to the backwoods of Ohio, where we unplugged and played board games with a bunch of friends. My first real vacation in 6 months, and I shot none of it beyond the walk to the airplane, because I'm a terrible, terrible vlogger. I don't understand what any of this is about or what it's for, and I don't know what I'm doing, and I apologize. My intentions were pure, but, what can I say? Like I said, we got into the woods of Ohio, we unplugged, and I didn't even want to look at my phone for 4 days, so I didn't shoot anything. I apologize. But we had a great time. So just, imagine, me unleashed in the woods of Ohio on a bunch of RPGs for 4 days, and kind of fill in the blank. It's more like old-time radio than vlogging, which, it has its own quaint experience, I feel. Anyway, I'm sorry. I failed. I failed on the whole thing, and I apologize. Welcome back to my writer's room, everyone. You would think I would be nice and refreshed and relaxed from taking my first vacation in 6 months. My first real vacation in 6 months. I am not at all. Actually, it's the exact opposite. I brought a really wicked cold back from Ohio. I was sick for right up until yesterday. I'm just starting to feel better now. And the minute I got back, everything exploded at work. This week, my agency has by now launched their new website and our new whole rebranding effort, and that was a big deal. At the same time, we had a big blockchain conference in India that we have representatives at. So everybody needed things from the content department, which is me, last minute, and they all needed them right away. So I was just slammed right from the minute I got back, trying to get all this stuff up, and I was sick for most of it. Have not had a single moment to devote to editing the new novel, the first draft of which I finished right before I went on vacation. So it hasn't been a great week so far, but that's the grind, man. That is the grind of the professional writer sometimes, and that's the grind that I'm in right now. So yeah, all of that because it's been kind of an exhausting, draining, soul-sucking week. I thought for the vlog this week I would take it easy on myself and answer a question because we have some questions that have backed up, some good questions from Team Hamshackle out there, my regular viewers of the vlog here. So I thought I'd take one, and we'd do a writing question this week. Imagine answering a writing question on my Writer's Room vlog. What a revolutionary idea. So our question this week comes from Tim Niederreiter, very affable gentleman. He does several podcasts, one of which is Alive After Reading, on which I've been a guest before. Tim's a good dude, big supporter of my stuff. And this is what Tim wanted to know. With that new Matt Wallace video, I have to ask how you write character deaths so well. Any tricks? Because I've yet to read one of yours that didn't feel earned, and you've written quite a few. Yes, I have. Yes, I have. Hashtag Team Hamshackle. So you want to kill your imaginary person. Totally understandable. Death, mortality. Two of those really universal concepts that no matter what genre of fiction you write in, you tend to have to deal with because we are mortal creatures after all, most of the time. You know, if you write genre fiction, you write SFF, you write horror, we're not always mortal, but mortality is I think one of the most universal themes in fiction. And eventually, if you're writing a story with drama and intrigue and action and elevation, somebody gonna die. That's just the way it goes. I love a good death scene. A good death scene in a movie, in a novel, in a comic book, in any kind of story, just shreds me in the best way. I've always been a sucker for them. From my earliest reading experiences, I can remember when I first got into Dragonlance novels when I was a kid. Sturm's death. In the second Dragonlance book in that first trilogy, that was a really formative one. When I read Beowulf the first time when I was a kid, and Beowulf, he dies fighting the dragon at the end of the thing, like that. Those are like the really early ones I remember from fiction. And then you go along, and who didn't cry like a baby when Arnold Schwarzenegger's lowered into the smoldering metal at the end of T2? Who didn't? Wrath of Khan, Spock, man, that was right here. So yeah, love a good death scene. Buckaroo Banzai, the novel, not the movie. Rawhide's death in Buckaroo Banzai is another one that I love. It's much more drawn out in the novel than it is in the movie. Although I love Clancy Brown as Rawhide in Buckaroo Banzai. Shout out to Clancy if he's watching this. One of my dearest Twitter friends. But no, seriously, shout out to Clancy if he's watching this. But in the novel, the death scene is much more drawn out and much more literate and just much more affecting. Anyway, so I love a good death scene. And as Tim points out, they tend to appear in my fiction because I love it. I love a good death scene. And it would be impossible in one vlog to really run, like a thesis course on writing death scenes. But I can give y'all some overriding thoughts that guide me when I approach a death scene. So, Tim, I hope that'll do for the purposes of where we are right now. So, when you're dealing with a death scene in a story, the death of a character in your story, you are essentially dealing with one or two main elements. All right, you're either dealing with a character facing their own mortality, their own death, and how they react to it. Or you're dealing with characters reacting to the death of that character and how they're responding and how they're processing it. Or you're dealing with some cases both at the same time. Like that's kind of what I keep in mind when I'm approaching a death scene, because you have to know what it's about. What do you always have to know? What are you writing about? Now, sometimes just to get this out of the way, sometimes a death scene is just a perfunctory plot element. If you're writing an epic fantasy, and they're encroaching on a castle, and somebody takes out, a guard, you don't have to give that guard, the spotlight and a Shakespearean death. Sometimes it's just something that has to happen to move the plot along. Now, if you want to do that, that could be something really interesting. We never get to see the nameless sentry taken out by the hero as they infiltrate the castle. We never really get to see their internal process. Point being, sometimes, they are elements of a plot, but if you're going for a death scene that you want to have some impact, if you want to reveal something about character, if you're dealing with a more main character or an important character, that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with that character facing their own mortality and how they respond to it, or how the people around them are responding to the death or reacting to the death of that character, or you're dealing with both simultaneously. That's what you have to keep in mind as like a baseline for approaching the death scene. Now, for me, it's always in the details. Everything's in the details. Everything is in the details to me. But death scenes in particular, to get real for a minute and a little dark, but it's necessary because we're dealing with death. And even in a fictional world, this should have gravitas. It should have meaning. It should have resonance. That's the whole point of doing it. If you've ever had the experience of watching another human being pass away, or having been in a room with someone who has just passed away, whether it's a loved one or a stranger or whatever the experience was, and 99.9% of the time, that's a horrific thing to go through. But if you've ever had that experience, and many of us have, I've had that experience, I really find what you take away from that, other than the impact it has on you, the grief and the loss and the horror, whatever you feel, what you take away from the actual scene are these very strange details. It's interesting to me what we remember about events like that. And at least, speaking for myself, but I think if you've gone through a similar experience, I think you'd be inclined to agree with me. The way their skin looked, the way their hair fell in a particular direction, their pallor, the smell in the room, if you were in the hospital, and you smelled this really iodine clinical smell, it's those sensory details that tend to get locked in there. And it's always strange what resonates with you in those moments. And that's something I very much try to bring to a character's death scene, especially when you're dealing with people reacting to that character's death scene. And I find that's what really brings it out and makes it authentic and conveys that human experience of dealing with death up close and personal. It's perception. It's the way time slows and you fixate on this one thing. And that absolutely does happen when I think we're faced with the death of other people. So that's one thing overall I would definitely try to impart to anybody tackling a death scene. At least how I approach it is, I really feel it's in the details, in those perceptual details. And it's always something surprising, and it's always something, and it's not always morbid, which is the really interesting thing. Even if it was a death that was pretty tragic to you personally, it's not always a morbid detail. Sometimes there are good details you take away from it, and you're lucky. I think you're lucky if that happens. I don't know that it's. I would think it's rarer in this world, but it is. But there are. It's strange what you remember, and that's something that I find useful to have in the back of my head when I approach that death scene. I'm looking for those perceptual details to really kind of add that authenticity and that real human experience to the scene. What else? Now, everything you do, pretty much everything you do when you write a story and you're writing about people, everything you should do should reveal character in some way. When you write a fight scene, I've talked about that in videos I've done on action scenes, that's about revealing character. Sex is about revealing character. Dialogue is about revealing character. Everything you do when you're dealing with these imaginary people of ours is about revealing character in some way or another. Death should be no exception. In fact, I think it should be one of the most ultimate expressions of revealing character. One of the tools to do that we have, because facing mortality, whether it's our own or someone else's, especially someone we care about or even someone we hated, I think that's one of the highest levels of revealing character we can get to, because that strips away everything, man. That bleeds you to the bone and really gets to how you feel, your rawest reaction to life and everything happening around you. So that's what a good death scene should also do. Whether you're dealing with the person facing their mortality or the people around them, you should be revealing character and how they react to it, the impact it has on them, what they say, what they do, everything. You should be looking for those moments to really reveal, what does this mean to this person? Who are they in this moment, and how can I express that? And it's not about dialogue. It's show don't tell, but you should be looking for ways to reveal character with this. And if you're dealing with the person who's experiencing their immortality, who's meeting their end, this is going to be the final and ultimate expression of their character. If it can work that way. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes even deaths from main characters are sudden. They don't see it coming. They don't have time to react. But even that you can work with. You can work with the absence of that character reveal and make it dramatic and make it impactful. Loss and just the abruptness of life and mortality is another thing we all deal with. The senselessness of it sometimes. All of that can come out and should come out in those moments, however you're choosing to play it. Whether you want to do a deep character reveal or whether it's a sudden thing, you're dealing with this suddenness and randomness of mortality and of death. But you should always be looking to reveal character in those moments. That's another thing that a good death scene should absolutely do if it's going to be effective and it's going to be well executed, in my opinion. Now, this is getting a little gimmicky. It's getting a little style over substance, perhaps. Perhaps you can do both if you're talented enough. But I'm going to throw it out there as my final thought on death scenes for the vlog. I really believe in smashing it home with a good closing line, man. Something really resonant, something really standalone. You know, I always, if you read the death scenes that I do, I think I tend to do that a lot. And again, you could call it gimmicky, but I just think you want to put it, this is such a heavy thing, and if you really invested yourself and your characters and your story into this character's final moment, you really want to put a period on it that leaves the audience impacted. You want them to feel that shit, man. So I really believe in like a short standalone closing line, sentence, paragraph by itself to really punctuate what all has happened. And it's good if you set it up earlier in the scene, you know, at the beginning or in the middle. You know, you kind of bring it full circle. And I know that can sound kind of confusing, but I'll just to give you an example. I came up, the last death scene I wrote was for the second to last Sin du Jour book that I did. I'm not gonna spoil it for you if you haven't read that yet and plan to. And if you haven't read it yet, please do so, because you know, books, money. That's how I keep all this shit going. Anyway, but the way I structured it was around a repeated phrase. So I titled the chapter "Go." I title all my chapters. That's just a thing I do. That's another gimmicky thing I do. But you do what you do. But earlier in the chapter, character is fighting for their life. He's kind of sacrificing himself for the rest of the team, and he yells at them, "Go." And this is a character who's very abrupt and man of few words. So it's a big deal that he yells at them to go, like to flee and leave him, and he'll deal with it. So he yells at them. He makes it through the melee. He hooks up back with them, but he's really badly injured, and he's dying. And when it's clear that there's no way to help him, and that they're stuck, you know, where they're stuck, you know, the friend that's holding him in his arms, he whispers into his ear, "Go." You know, so I brought that line back, and that was the structure that I came up with to kind of to structure this death scene. It really helped me write it, because it was a tough scene to write. It was a character I liked a lot, and it was not, you know, it was a very emotional moment, and that gave me an anchor, and I think gave the audience an anchor to kind of cling to when I'm writing in, and I think when you read it, that comes out through. So structure can help you, and it can help you in setting up something to really put the period on at the end. And that's my final thought. Is I'm a big believer in putting a period on that scene with something resonant, something impactful to really drive it home and make it memorable. That is it for this week. Tim, thank you for the question. I hope you found that useful in some way. My ramblings. I hope the rest of you all did as well. You can always ask me a question. Ask me whatever you want about writing or any other subject. You can do it in the comments here on the video, any video. You can do it on Twitter, Facebook. Use the hashtag TeamHamShackle. I know I've got several backlog, but I will get to them in due time. So feel free to ask me a question about anything you like. I appreciate it. Couple of things I want to mention. In a couple of weeks here, 2 or 3 weeks in fact, I will be at WorldCon. Mer Lafferty and I will be doing our yearly Ditch Diggers Live, the live version of our podcast about writing as a job at WorldCon. I believe this is our 4th. They're always a good time. They're always a big event. People always come out and have fun. I'm taking my wife this year to WorldCon because Mer and I are nominated for a Hugo Award for said podcast, for Ditch Diggers. So we'll be attending the ceremony, and I'm excited about that. You know, it's the Hugos. You can't not... If you've been a lifelong science fiction fan, even as far as you come along as a writer and you realize awards are kind of bullshit, it's a Hugo Award. So I'm excited about it. I think we might actually have a shot this year. I'd like a rocket. I'll admit it. I'm not perfect. So WorldCon in San Jose. If you can make it, come check out Ditch Diggers Live. September 16th, I believe. I'm actually forgetting the date right now, and that's why I suck at promotion apparently. But I'll put the right date in the description below. The second omnibus edition of Sin du Jour with the last 4 books in it is coming out for Kindle. It'll be a big Kindle bundle of the last 4 books. You can buy them all at the same time. The first bundle with the first 3 books came out a couple of years ago. So if you haven't gotten into the series, you've been waiting, this is the time. You can get all the books together for the best price. It's like half off, it ends up being. Get them all together, 2 bundles. You can binge read the crap out of them, and I think you'll enjoy that. So those are the 2 things I wanted to mention, WorldCon and the omnibus edition of Sin du Jour. The final course is what we're calling it. It's coming up And as always, appreciate your support on all these things. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know what your favorite death scene in a movie or TV show or book is and why it is. I'm interested to hear that. In the meantime, please do subscribe. And if you do subscribe, remember to click the bell icon, the little bell, so you're notified when I make new videos, which I do every week. And I will see you next Tuesday, although I know this video came out Thursday. We'll be back on schedule next week, I promise. Like I said, this week was hectic. Next Tuesday, same Matt time, same Matt channel. See you, everybody.